Good day, good people. I'm David Johns, and I'm back with another installment of Three Things. First up this week, the federal government announced that almost all health insurers must cover all costs associated with PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis. It's a daily pill that is highly effective in preventing HIV. I take PrEP daily, and I have since 2016. The pill is not magical and should be a part of an overall health regimen designed to ensure your wellness and to reduce the transmission of sexually transmitted infections. In case you missed it, they are no longer referred to as STDs. The new rule states that insurers cannot charge a copay, co-insurance, deductible. They cannot charge you for anything, including for lab tests and quarterly clinic visits, which are otherwise required to maintain PrEP prescription cards. This comes months after the Biden-Harris administration required insurers to remove out-of-pocket fees for PrEP. And it's incredibly important given that my initial copay for PrEP was $50 a month, which can be preventative for so many people who need it the most. Making PrEP more accessible is a significant step forward to fight the HIV/AIDS epidemic in our country. It's especially important for Black, gay, same-gender loving, and bisexual men who continue to suffer disproportionately, mostly in part because we disproportionately lack access to treatment and prevention resources and support. That's by design. That's how white supremacy works. Second, we've seen a significant step forward in the fight against legislating hate via anti-trans and anti-LGBTQ legislation at the state level. The Louisiana House of Representatives sustained the veto against anti-trans sports bill, which would have banned transgender athletes, particularly trans women and girls, from competing in sports consistent with their gender identity, not that assigned to them at birth. And in Arkansas, a federal judge temporarily blocked a ban on gender-affirming care for transgender minors. This ruling sends a clear message to states across this country that gender-affirming care is life-saving care, and politicians should not have the ability to take it away. Thus far in 2021, there have been more than 250 anti-LGBTQ bills under consideration in 30 different states. 25 of these bills have already passed in the states of Arkansas, Alabama, Florida, Tennessee, Montana, and West Virginia. While there is so much more work to do, it's encouraging to see blatantly harmful and hateful legislation being struck down. We must continue to advocate for trans youth and fight against anti-trans and anti-LGBTQ legislation as it is introduced. Third, after a 2-week trial, Ed Buck was found guilty in the deaths of 2 Black men, Jamel Moore and Timothy Dean. Buck is a white supremacist and a former Democratic donor who used his power and his money to target and exploit vulnerable Black men who he derived pleasure in harming. For the past 4 years, loved ones of the victims and activists have been fighting to ensure Buck was held accountable for his heinous crimes. This community includes Jasmine Koenig, co-founder of NBJC. She organized protests around the case, founded Justice for Jamel, and provided daily coverage of the trial. Thank you for your leadership, Jasmine. In a blog post recently, Koenig said, "Real justice is making sure that another Ed Buck never happens again. And while relieved that Ed Buck will not be able to harm any more Black men, we, together, must do more to ensure that there are systemic changes to protect the most vulnerable members of our community. This is especially true while the heterosexual agenda is being advanced by rappers and couch prophets who pontificate about the spread of HIV and abuses perpetrated against the most vulnerable members of our community without actual facts like those presented in this case. It took so many years to hold Buck accountable because of white supremacy and how it works in the United States. And this is a fact that must be acknowledged if we ever truly want to talk about justice. My thoughts and prayers and efforts to change the conditions that led us here will continue to be with the loved ones of Jamel and Timothy, Buck's other victims, and anyone affected by this case. I'll see you soon with another edition of Three Things.